Hey, what's up everyone? It's Mateo here at LMS. Today we're getting started planting some seeds, getting ready for the plant sale, the third annual plant sale in May. So this is a great time if you want to start your own garden or maybe a few plants in your house to start seeding. So we're going to take you through today how to actually plant out and what we're doing here with these 10 by 20 trays. This is a great activity to do at home now if you have some time and you want to experiment and start some seeds. So I'm gonna pass it off to Shlomi now, and he's gonna tell you exactly how to do it.
Lots of different containers you can use to start seeds in. Maybe some old plant containers like this that maybe you or your parents saved from last year, or oftentimes you can find them places at gardening stores, places where you can salvage them or buy some old cups like this for plants, or you could even use paper cups or Dixie cups. But you want to make sure whatever you start your seeds in has drainage holes in the bottom. You see how those have holes? These have little holes in the bottom. And then these 10 by 20 trays that we're using here all have drainage holes in the bottom. Now this is more what we would use here or on a larger farm, especially when we're really starting a lot. These might be too many for you to start at home. So whatever containers you can find, even if you save old strawberry containers or the little clamshell containers that cherry tomatoes come in, something like that. You can get creative and use any container that has drainage holes. So when you're starting seeds, you want to make sure you get a potting soil that is a very fine mix, that doesn't have big woody chunks in it, because the seeds need a nice fine soil mix to be able to have good contact with the soil and to be able to take root. So this is a nice fine mix. As you can see, there's not too many big woody chunks in it. I mean, there are some, but those, when I see them, we'll just pick them out of the way. And this is a peat-based mix. It has some sphagnum peat moss in it. It has some perlite in it, and maybe a little vermiculite. And then this mix also has, I believe, some soybean meal in it as a slow-release organic plant-based fertilizer to help the seedlings when they're just getting started. Some mixes will have compost in it or other types of fertilizers in them, and some won't. For the first couple weeks, the plants are not going to need a lot of nutrients from the soil, so that's why a lot of seed starting mixes won't have a lot of fertilizer in them. Eventually you will transplant all of these seedlings either into your garden beds or into pots with a different type of potting soil that would have more long-term nutrition in it. And of course, there's always fertilizers you can add as well later on. So regardless of which type of container you are starting with, whether it's something like these or a paper cup, you would just start by filling it up with soil. You don't want to press the soil too tight, but you do want to push out some of the air. And then we'll top it off again with some loose soil. And now that'll be ready to plant in. You'll just make a little divot like that you'll plant your seeds in, and then lightly cover it with soil. Same thing if you were doing it with a tray like this. Push out the air and fill it again, and then make your little planting holes. And then you would put seeds in it and cover them. The first batch of seeds we're starting today are things that like to grow in cooler weather, in the cooler spring weather. So this is a lot of the herbs like parsley, dill, cilantro, and also a lot of the green vegetables like chard and kale, some other greens like dandelion greens, things that we'll want to transplant into our garden in about 4 to 6 weeks. Probably next week is when we would start the things that grow really well in the summer, such as tomatoes and cucumbers and peppers and winter squash and summer squash and eggplants. All of those fruiting crops that like the hot weather of the summer, we'll start those a little bit later, maybe mid-April. We're also going to start our flowers today. And so here's how I would fill this tray, similar to the smaller ones. Then I like to put it on a flat surface. And just like we did with the smaller containers, I'll use my fingers to push out the air. We don't want there to be big air pockets in the soil that then when the roots of the plant start to grow, they don't have any soil to make contact with or to grow into. So that's why we want to make sure that the soil is pressed in there, but not so tightly pressed in there that it's too tight for the roots to grow. And now we're gonna top that off again. And now this time when we press it in, we'll actually be making our little planting holes. Most seeds we plant about 1/4 of an inch deep. There'll be instructions on the back of your packets of seeds that will always tell you some of the planting instructions. Now some of these are a little low, so that one I might top off a little bit more.
We like to use Johnny's here. They're a great cooperative out of Maine, but there's really so many different seed sources and supplies that you can find either online, in your local grocery store, your garden store, even Job Lot. Really, you can find them anywhere. All right, here we have Bright Lights decorated chard, also known as rainbow chard, that you all have probably seen plenty of times in the stores and farmers markets. So these seeds are pretty large. They're a little easier to work with. For some of the seeds that you'll have, especially, you know, some of the kale seeds are really small, the broccoli seeds are small, but these are really easy for demonstration purposes. I'll be putting 1 or 2 seeds per cell. So an interesting thing about the chard seeds, along with beet seeds, is that this is actually not one seed, it's actually a cluster of seeds. So this seed can actually have up to 5 little plants within it. So a big job after we plant these and they start to grow up is that we're gonna have to thin out some of the seedlings as well. So I'm gonna work here, finish seeding out this tray, and then we'll show you the next step.
All right, so here I've got some calendula seeds that I just sowed into these cells. And now I'm gonna lightly cover them with soil. And again, always look at the instructions on the back of your seed packets for how deep to plant them. Most flower seeds just like a very light covering. So I'm just gonna cover these very lightly. Some seeds need a little bit of light to germinate, like a lot of flowers and lettuces, which lettuce is actually in the daisy family. So in the same family as a lot of flowers. And some of those like to have a little light to germinate, which is why you don't want to cover them too much. But then you have to make sure that they stay moist. That's the trick, to not let them dry out, those seeds, while they're germinating. But most seeds can germinate in the dark and don't need light until they pop above the soil. So we'll just lightly pat these all in to make sure that the soil is in contact with the seed. You want good soil to seed contact. And then we'll water them in and we'll bring them inside because it's too cold right now to leave them outside to start. So you have to have a little setup inside. Right, now when you're watering in your seeds after they're all covered, you want to make sure you have something to water with that's going to be very gentle so that you don't get soil splash. You don't want a powerful water stream that's going to splash the soil and the seeds around, because that could mess up your whole planting. So I have here a special hose head that has a nice gentle rain, and if I stand back enough, it'll be a nice gentle watering that these seeds and soil can handle. You might also use, find a watering can that has a very gentle water, something with a lot of little holes in it. And you just want to make sure you get nice, even coverage. It's good to feel the weight of your containers before you start watering, because then you can start to get a feel for whether they have enough water in them just by the weight, because they start off very light when the soil is dry. And these are still very light, so I know they need plenty more water. We've got all of our seeds started that we're starting today, our early spring seedlings, and now we've got them on this grow rack. Now this is the same rack that we used here in the middle school to grow microgreens on in the winter, and it's just a steel baker's rack, a fairly large one that has some lights that we've hooked up to every shelf. These are pretty cheap LED lights that you can get at Home Depot or even order from Amazon. Ideally, you want to use supplemental lights like this because most household windows will not give enough light for your seedlings to grow strong and healthy. And one key sign to know if your seedlings do not have enough light is if they start stretching, or what's called getting leggy, meaning if this was a little seedling, they'd be reaching for the light, getting very tall and skinny and reaching towards the sunlight. The plants should be standing straight and compact and getting nice strong stems. A lot of people seem to have trouble when they first begin starting seeds. And that's because there's a lot of details that really matter when you're starting seeds. And it's something you get better at with experience. So don't be discouraged if not all of your seeds do well the first time around. Some of the details you have to think about: having the right type of soil mix, having the right amount of light, having the right amount of moisture, having the right temperature, and the right timing. Starting your seeds at the right time so that by the time they're ready to go outside, it's not too cold. Or starting your seeds in the right size container. So there's many ways to do this, but I'll show you the system we have here. On these racks, we've got these LED lights. And I've also got a heat mat on some of these. So the heat mat sits underneath the trays, and that helps to keep the soil at the ideal temperature. And different seeds have different temperature requirements. So a happy medium for most seeds is around 75, but some like it cooler, some like it warmer. All of these are covered with humidity domes. These plastic humidity domes help to hold in the moisture just while the seeds are germinating. Because once the seeds germinate and they pop above the soil, you can see them, you want to take the humidity domes off. We have a mixture here. Not all of these seeds need light to germinate, but some of them do, and so that's why we are going to have the lights on. But if all the seeds you were growing didn't say that they need light to germinate, until they pop above the soil and you can see them, you could leave the lights off. And these lights I have on a timer, so they come on and off automatically. That's about it. So remember, it's definitely a fun, awesome thing to start your own seeds. It takes experience. So the more you do it, the more you'll learn what works and what doesn't work, and you'll get better at it each time you try. Whatever doesn't work out for you this year, remember, we'll always have plenty of seedlings this spring at the plant sale in May.
All right, there you have it. We just planted our seeds. We're showing you how to do it at home. And every seed packet will say germination rate. Maybe it's 90%, 95%, 98%. So even us doing it in here, not all the seeds are gonna germinate. You doing it at home, maybe not all the seeds are gonna germinate. A professional farmer in a big farm, not all the seeds are gonna germinate. But here's one guaranteed thing. If you plant the seed, it's way more likely to germinate than if you don't plant any seeds at all. So either way, we're planting plenty of seeds for all y'all here, and feel free to reach out if you have any questions. We'll help you plant some seeds at home. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for what's yet to come. Peace and plants.